Hey folks, Guerin Emig and Bill Haisten back for another episode of Extra Points. A couple Tulsa World columnists talking college and high school football with you. We do it weekly, and you can join in the fun by downloading us for free, courtesy of Apple, Google, and Spotify. We thank you sincerely for your loyalty with regard to reading the world and listening or watching what we have to say on this stuff. Bill, I just finished a mailbag, and the lead email was from a concerned Cowboy fan, OSU Cowboy fan, trying not to freak out over the defensive effort against Central Michigan. This is what I was thinking leaving the stadium last week, and I will be thinking going into Saturday's game against Arizona State. You tell me if I'm wrong. I'd be much more excited about how Spencer Sanders played than worried about how the defense looked.
That's exactly fair, and it's exactly the way that was exactly my takeaway from that game. Although a couple of isolation shots in the second half of Derek Mason in the coach's box, and he looked like the most defeated guy in college football. He was so frustrated. So I would be concerned if I thought I didn't have the physical pieces to make it work. I think they do. And I got to tell you, Kendall Daniels is more of a force early in his career than I expected him to be because of his build mostly and because he came from a 2A school. I don't know. But I think he's going to end up being really an impact guy for them in the back end of that defense. I mean, it just got, Guerin, you were there. It just got sloppy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you're up that big, that early in the game.
There you go. There it is.
How are you supposed to sustain that razor sharp focus and intensity and grind for 4 quarters when you're up by 5 touchdowns? I mean,
yes. We saw Oklahoma sag after they jumped ahead of UTEP 21-0. I mean, it's a human nature element more than they got nothing going on.
Yeah, no, I would be happy that you know, I mean, look at if you want to feel better about everything, look at Spencer Sanders' career game log at the fluctuation, in a lot of cases week to week, and now he's put together 2 really dynamic performances back to back. And now if I was going to be worried about anything as an OSU person right now this week, I'd be worried that because I'm presuming that every year Arizona State plays one great game, at least one a year, right? With their athletes. And I just hope it's not this week. If I'm an OSU fan, I don't need that drama this week. But if there is a landmine between now and you know, start of conference play, this is it, obviously. Yeah. I'd be a little worried about you know, I just really believe that what the problems of last Thursday are so fixable. And they're not, and really not even problems in most cases. There were some examples of guys being out of position and maybe guys being a little lost, confused, whatever. But that many new personnel coupled with the circumstances of a blowout. Yeah. No, I think they've got the right pieces and the right guy to coordinate it all and to figure it out. And it'll look a lot better.
Yep.
I'm just worried that you just hope that ASU, well, you know, as a guy who wants to see good football, I hope ASU comes in here and plays beautifully well.
Sure.
I want to see that game, because I'd like to see Oklahoma State's response to somebody coming in here and trying to beat them.
They are going to be more athletic, certainly, than Central Michigan was. And as well as I thought Central Michigan's quarterback played in that game, Emory Jones, the former Florida Gator, is the quarterback now at ASU. He can be a dynamic playmaker. He can be. I would still put my stock in OSU winning and potentially winning comfortably in Sanders. Again, it's being a better quarterback than Jones in this game. But Bill, if you take the second half against Notre Dame and the first half and maybe even the first drive of the third quarter against Central Michigan, just take those 4 quarters. I don't know if an OSU quarterback has ever played that well over a 4-quarter span. The numbers were we're talking 600 some odd passing yards, 150 some odd rushing yards, 6 touchdowns accounted for. That's historical stuff. And I know it's 4 quarters, and there's always a consistency question when it comes to Spencer Sanders, but he's pushing, I think, toward answering, I think, that question.
Well, I would say like the most dazzling quarterback performances I can remember in my years on that beat probably were, let's say, the first half of a couple of Baylor games when Whedon was the guy, and OSU would be up like 35-0 at half, and then Mason Rudolph at Pittsburgh in 17, I think, or 16. OSU won that game 59 to something, but they scored like 50 of those points in a half, but I think those are the gold standards for just quarterback efficiency and brilliance until these last few quarters for Spencer Sanders. And he, like you say, and what Spencer adds that the other two didn't have is the run game element. So you could argue that it's a more complete performance. Although Zach Robinson had some
right.
really dynamic performances, especially in 2007. I mean, the guy almost rushed for 1,000 yards that year. So but with regard to being a complete quarterback, adding that dimension in the run game, efficient in the passing game, and taking care of the football, Spencer Sanders is on a roll. And if he strings another one together this week and closes it out in a good way after that, going into conference play, I'm going to be inclined to think he's gotten beyond that, that inconsistency.
I'm really glad you mentioned Daniels, the kid from Beggs, who's going to be a comer at Oklahoma State. It reminded me to ask you about the moment at the end of Oklahoma's opener against UTEP. Again, everyone got excited about the start, and then the game lagged in the heat for 2.5 hours, and there really wasn't anything to get excited about until right at the end, where the Miners are driving to try to score an touchdown. I'm standing maybe 10 feet behind the end zone there, Bill, and who's the one that steps up to pick off the pass and get Oklahoma's first turnover of the season is a guy you know pretty well, Gentry Williams.
I mean, I was very happy for Gentry because honestly, after he tore his ACL, Guerin, I mean, unfortunately, I got a lot of friends and connections in the knee injury business, and the more I heard about it, it was not a garden variety ACL tear.
Yeah.
And so there was some concern, as to whether he would ever be restored at or close to his previous speed level, which was, what was the legend on him? It wasn't a legend, it was true. In the 8th grade, he ran the fastest 400 meters in the state of Oklahoma. Not as an 8th grader, period.
Yeah.
Including high school kids. So would he ever get back to that level of speed and closing on the football and agility, all of it? And then there were, as a senior, Booker T, Guerin, he would wear a brace one game and not the next, and you never were quite sure where he stood with regard to his recovery. So time will tell if he becomes like an every down, difference maker for OU in the back of that defense. But he sure looked pretty bouncy and pretty fast the other day, and it was just awesome for him. Talk about 2 statement plays by rookies. I mean, the Freeman touchdown, which was fantastic. Oh my God, that, and then for Gentry to clean it up at the end with a takeaway, that was great.
Yep. Yeah, Gavin Freeman. I talked to him back in the spring. I think it was spring, qualified for spring. Felt like winter still outside, but anyways, right after he, made the decision to go to Oklahoma as a walk-on after Tech pulled his offer, Texas Tech, and I was thinking of what he said that day when he finished the end around for the touchdown, because everyone's compared him to Sterling Shepard, 2 kids from Heritage Hall, undersized but just have a knack, right? And Gavin Freeman doesn't have Shepard's ballyhoo about him as he comes out of high school, and yet there is going to be that comparison. And the quote from that conversation was, I love Sterling Shepard, respect Sterling Shepard, but I don't want to be Sterling Shepard. I want to be Gavin Freeman, and
Right,
that's not a bad way to begin.
Well, I know this much about the guy. He's got unbelievable balance. Unbelievable balance. To have unbelievable balance at a high rate of speed is a gift, and not many guys have that. And I don't care about his measurables, his height and weight. I don't care about any of that. If you can catch it and do what he did after the catch, or do what he did on that play, there's a place for a guy like that always. So good for OU, and too bad Tech. I mean, I'm not sure why you would have pulled. I don't know anything about that. Why they would rescind an offer, or take a step back in their interest on a guy like that, because does he not look like about 10 others who have flourished at Texas Tech? Right. So
yeah,
no, I hope Freeman, just like I was hopeful, I guess I can go ahead and say this now. I mean, I was hopeful, that Cole Adams would play at OU or OSU, just stay in state. I mean, you want to keep the best guys, best Oklahoma high school guys in state. Yeah, speaking of whom, I saw Cole Adams yesterday. He's now 9 days removed from surgery. Great spirits. He's in effect the rest of the season a player coach at Owasso, and he spoke with Nick Saban last week. Nick Saban said, "This changes nothing. You will be here with us in January. At which time he'll be cleared 100%, for strength and conditioning,
right,
and should be good to go by the start of spring football in March for them."
Can you clarify? Is there any chance he could play in a postseason situation for Owasso, or probably just?
Okay, if he were a guy whose finish line was his senior year of high school, his football finish line, sure, you probably could. But with him graduating early, moving to Tuscaloosa right after Christmas, and intending to be fully available for spring football at Alabama, I don't think even Bill Blankenship himself would want to see him risk that.
Sure.
At any level of the playoffs. So I think we've seen the last of Cole Adams in a high school uniform.
Gosh, man. Goodness. A couple of big ones. It's going to be the case every week, it feels like, in 6A1. Got the Blankenship battle, right? The Owasso and BA got Union and Jinx, and that will come down to, for starters, the quarterback at Union, who used to be at Jinx and then now plays against the Trojans.
Crazy.
How is Shaker Rice equipped, you think, to handle this, number one? And number two, you have any indication as to how he's going to perform?
Well, I know through 2 games, he's completed 67% for nearly 400 yards without a pick. He's been, and his numbers at Jinx last year were just almost a carbon copy of that. So he's a consistent kid. 68% last year, 67% now. How might he handle it up here? I don't know. He seems kind of unflappable. I spoke at length, and by at length I mean like a long time today, with his father. I had been pursuing, not like an everyday pursuit, and I'm not going to badger anybody like every day, although I've badgered Mike Holder like every day on some stuff back in the day. But
I'm sure he misses that.
Well, I don't miss having to do it, and he doesn't miss having to react to it. But in the end, to Mike Holder's credit, I always got what I wanted, pretty much. He was such a funny guy to deal with. I actually miss Mike Holder. I do. But how Shaker will handle a hot crowd like that tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Because he kind of with his move from Jinx to Union, he kind of really rocked that rivalry, and it's kind of it's always great football, and it's always interesting. But I think both fan bases got so accustomed, Guerin, to these big games that the attendance for those games kind of dwindled, and now they're back on campus, home and home, and So this adds, this turns the oven from like 350 back up to broil, Friday night. And I think he'll handle it fine. He really does seem pretty unflappable for a kid who just turned 16, and he's a 10th grader, but he's also 13-0 as a starter in 6A1. So, and he's been around some, a lot of pressure situations. I mean, every game at Jenks Reunion is a pressure situation, because even if you're not interested in the opponent,
that's right,
it's a big game for them.
That's right.
You got the bullseye on your back. So, but I'm told, both hallways at the hallways at each high school are covered with like imagery and messaging about, you stole our quarterback, and we've got your quarterback, and whatever. And so it just seems to have really, I just get a sense that there won't be an empty seat anywhere at Union tomorrow, Friday night. And the unfortunate part of this game is that Jenks is so dadgum cut to pieces by injuries. It's
I read
it.
Yeah, I read your column Sunday, and I was flipping around Friday night, and I'd been kind of keeping an eye on Jenks. So Wasso was Wasso, right? Just last Friday, and locked onto the game just as they were carrying a number 20 off the field. Yeah, and then
Rocky's nephew.
They said the name, and I'm going, oh no. I mean, that didn't look, and that's carrying him off the field. That's not helping him off the field.
No, they carried him off, and it's the report I got yesterday at the news conference from the Jenks side was, it's bad. He's done. He's done.
Oh man.
Yeah. So Jenks, I think the number was last week, Guerin, 9 starters were out. Maybe 1 or 2 of them back this week. Jack Kalmus apparently out for the year. Who, by the way, to me anyway, he wears Rocky's jersey number 20, right? And he's really angular, like Rocky, like long arms, long limbs. And I watched him in a practice, and I just marveled at how much in a football uniform he looks just like Rocky. He's not as big as Rocky yet, but he's just just starting his junior year. So I hope Jet Kalmus, who has a great name too, Jet. I hope he makes it. And his dad was a Jenks baseball legend, Richie Kalmus. So I hope Jet makes 1,000% recovery, comes back this year, lights it up, and goes and plays big time college football. But yeah, it looks like he's done for the year. So, but no, I mean, baby, I mean, it's like, dadgum, you got a Jenks Union game, and you got this storyline with Rice kid, and if a fully loaded Jenks were going in there, you'd think, look out. I mean, as it is, you got to favor Union by a couple of touchdowns. But Alan Trimble won a state championship game in '98. He didn't have any business winning over a great Union team.
Yep.
Maybe the best Union team ever. So you never know in this rivalry.
That's right.
It should be interesting.
Hey, we started with a concerned fan with regard to OSU football. Let's finish with another email I got. I think it was Saturday night. In fact, it arrived just as the TU game was over. I had to follow it via, Twitter and that cast, because I was at Oklahoma UTEP. But I could tell just by the tone of the email that things had just gone sideways for the Hurricane. And his quote was, the reader's quote was, the fan's quote was, only TU could lose a game like this. And that's true, because we've seen him lose games like this. But you know what, Bill? They also win games like that. That's how they play football over there. Yeah, every Saturday is a full season soap opera.
I watched every snap of that game. And I talked with a guy after that game ended, and he's a TU person, football person, former TU football person.
Sure.
And well, is that a vague way to allude to this guy? Anyway, but he said, I've seen TU just in the last 6 or 7 years, I've seen TU lose that game 12 times in that way. And I just said, it's it just feels like TU is just so unlucky in games like that. And now you're right, they have won some of those.
Yeah, they have.
There's an imbalance on the final scores of those games. And TU has lost more than its share of them. And I mean, you had a few years ago a really good Memphis team. TU had them beat, and right in the middle of the field, and a very, if not a chip shot field goal, a very makeable field goal, and you miss that field goal on the final play and lose that game. And then so to lose that game the other day, they give up the punt return or the punt block,
right?
Touchdown, and then Tulsa responds in such a beautiful way: drive, score, get the ball back, drive, and score. And I think, what a great response! You go up by 2 scores. And I'm thinking, okay, let's go. They're up 10 in the fourth quarter, albeit early fourth, but they're up 10 in the fourth with all the momentum. I said, let's see how they close on this deal. And then can't do it. And then you leave it in the hands of a kicker who's been a good kicker for them.
Yes. Yes.
And you misfire. And boy, talk about, did you see the way the East Carolina game ended the other day?
Yeah,
East Carolina, NC State.
I did.
Was that sickening?
Or LSU, Florida State.
LSU, yeah. I mean, you fail. Are you kidding me? After 19 timeouts in a row, I guess nobody during the timeout on the LSU side said, "Be sure and block that guy on the edge there. Be sure and block that guy on the wing there."
Oh,
are you kidding me? That's how you lose that game. Because I mean, they started at the 1. And I said, there ain't no way they're gonna go 9.
I know.
Way. And they did. And then they don't block on the extra point. So yeah, it's a horrible, sickening way to lose. TU misses the field goal at the end and has the punt block, and otherwise.
Davis Brin, who like a lot of other quarterbacks since Dane Evans, right, has had interception itis, and it's been a real issue. Does not throw a pick, throws for 460 in the game, throws the ball terrifically. Still has the fumble, though, that is costly early. I think Stokes is the one that fumbled later, fourth quarter, that was costly, and then the special teams breakdowns. And so you take a few steps forward, and penalties being another issue in the past for Philip Montgomery teams. I don't think it was that bad. I think
7 penalties, like 7 for 65 or something like that. Which,
right? So
compared to a lot of their games, is okay.
So what I'm saying is they bury some skeletons only to have a few more bones stick out of the ground, right? It's the silly way to put it.
Well, it's just so frustrating for the TU people, TU fans, because, and obviously for Philip. I mean, Philip in the post game just looks as sick as I've ever seen him after a loss. And you go in as the favorite, and you have that beautiful third quarter flurry, and you right the ship, and you take the lead, and then you blow it in the fourth, and then here you are. In effect, you're right where you were a year ago today. Yeah. You lost on opening night, and you're looking at a hopefully not. I mean, hopefully they get hot and just string a bunch of wins together. But it's just the same recurring theme where they lose a game they shouldn't lose, and then they're constantly just battling to get back to 500 and then become a bowl eligible team. And it's just, but yeah, no doubt, a massive wasted opportunity. Yep. As a road favorite. And undoubted in my mind, there was no doubt which team had more football talent. It was Tulsa. Wasn't even close. Tulsa had more football talent than Wyoming and should have won the game.
And now they get the defending MAC champions at home on Saturday, and I think the next week is the next week the trip to, or no, maybe the week after. They do have the trip to the Grove to play Ole Miss, SEC opponent coming up.
Yeah, I can't remember if they have a week, but
that might be the 20th. No, it is the next week, and then they have Jacksonville State coming into Chapman Stadium on the 24th. I think I've got that right. So
they play Jacksonville State on the 17th.
There you go, and then it's Ole Miss on the 24th,
and then it's Ole Miss on the 24th.
So This is not a tap-in Saturday, is what I'm saying. Northern Illinois, again, they'll have, I think, more talent, more athletes, but Northern Illinois knows what they're doing. They won 9 games in the MAC last year. We'll talk about this next week, Bill. We'll load up on OU Nebraska. How about, since we'll have the Sooners going to Lincoln a week from Saturday. So
we could do this every day next week and talk about OU Nebraska. We could the history of and today, but we'll squeeze it into 20 minutes next week. I can't wait for that game.
Yeah, we know it's going to be a single-digit game because it doesn't, and that has something to do with Oklahoma. That's Nebraska's life.
I don't know. I just have a feeling. This is it feels like a do or die game for Scott Frost. I don't know. I saw so many positives from Brent Venables' first game, and you and I talked months and months ago, and everybody acknowledges that OU had kind of become more style than substance, and I think you're already seeing evidence that substance matters, and style is important with regard to selling the program, but it can't supplant substance as the key piece of your program. And I think Brent Venables is all about substance, approach to it. And I loved what I saw last week from OU. Loved it, really did, and thought that it looked great on TV. It just, you know what I mean? It just the spring game was important at OU this year, more than any I can remember in a long time. And then what happened last week was a great first step for Brent. So
yep.
I guess that's a long-winded way of saying if OU goes up there and beats Nebraska comfortably, I'm not going to be surprised because OU's got better players. And after getting my first look at Brent and Levy and that new staff, I think OU's a better coached team, and I think they may go up there and wear Nebraska out.
They've got that chance, that's for sure. They'll wear Kent State out Saturday night. I don't think there's much question about that. The more intriguing games in Stillwater, we'll keep an eye on that and cover that. Big, always an intriguing game when Jinx plays Union. We've got that covered. BA.
Oh, and OU, Kent State. There was the Jinx Union news conference yesterday, right, Guerin?
Kent State's hanging out here. That's right. Yeah.
Kent State was practicing at Union's. I walked out of the UMAC when we were done there, and one of their support staff guys, I said, have you been down into the weight room here yet? He said, oh my Lord, yeah. He said, we lifted here yesterday or Sunday or whatever. And I said, how about that? And he said, yeah, we'd like to take that home with us. So
there's always been this undercurrent that Union and others have college facilities. Now there's potentially factual proof of that. You may hear Kent coaches and staff members say, why don't we have that?
Well, I mean,
as a competitive FBS team.
If you combine the Union strength and conditioning space with the wrestling room, Aaron, it's about the size of a city block. It's crazy. Yeah, and it's mind blowing that it's a high school facility, but it is very impressive, and that's why Union. That's why Kirk Frederick hosts a lot of people who come through there to tour it, because a lot of schools want to try to replicate that. So, but it is the gold standard in Oklahoma high school football for sure.
All right, Bill, good stuff, man. We will talk next week. Thank you very much for tuning in, folks. Keep reading us, keep watching us, listening to us. Again, you can catch our podcasts, videos, download for free on Apple, Google, or Spotify. Have a good one.